Liz Cheney, that'd be Dick Cheney's repulsive little daughter, running against you with Kamala Harris?
Well, I think it hurts Kamala a lot, actually. Look, she's a deranged person. General says, I'm going to recuse myself. And I said, why the hell didn't he tell me that before I put him in? How do you recuse yourself?
So Paul Ryan was not a talent. He wasn't a leader.
Donald Trump has targeted House Speaker Paul Ryan, calling him a very weak and ineffective leader. In one of his tweets, Trump nodded to his slip in the polls, saying it's hard to do well when Ryan and other Republicans who turned their back on him offer him zero support. Trump said that since the shackles are off, he can now fight for America the way he wants to.
Why are we helping some of the people? Why are we helping Liz Cheney? I mean, Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic and crying Adam Kinzinger. He's a super crying. I never saw the guy not crying. He's always crying.
They bet their entire careers on the idea that Republicans would turn on him, but in their quest to undermine him, they found their own careers in jeopardy. Trump didn't just survive, he made sure they were humiliated, kicked out of office, and completely erased from politics. This is the brutal downfall of the 15 Republicans who tried to kill MAGA and ended up destroying themselves instead. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll see exactly why betting against Trump is career suicide. Mike Pence, the vice president who thought he had a future. For 4 years, Mike Pence was Trump's most loyal soldier, but on January 6th, he made the one decision that changed everything, which was his refusal to block the election results.
January 6th was a tragic day in the life of our nation. But thanks to the courage of law enforcement, the violence was quelled, and we reconvened the Congress the very same day to complete the work of the American people under the Constitution of the United States. As I've said many times, on that fateful day, President Trump's words were reckless. They endangered my family and everyone at the Capitol. But the American people deserve to know that on that day, President Trump also demanded that I choose between him and the Constitution. Now voters will be faced with the same choice. I chose the Constitution, and I always will. Irrespective of the indictment, I want the American people to know that I had no right to overturn the election. And then on that day, President Trump asked me to put him over the Constitution, but I chose the Constitution, and I always will. I mean, I really do believe that anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. And anyone who asks someone else to put themselves over the Constitution should never be president of the United States again.
Despite stabbing Trump in the back, Pence thought he could still win over Republican voters. He launched a 2024 presidential campaign and got humiliated. He dropped out before most people even realized he was running.
What's your reaction to Vice President Pence saying that you can't endorse?
Oh, I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less. We need patriots. We need strong people in our country. Our country's going downhill very fast, very rapidly. Millions of people coming across the border, coming from jails, from prisons, coming from mental institutions and insane asylums, terrorists. We need strong people in this country. We don't need weak people.
Trump didn't even have to take Pence down. The voters did it for him. But Pence wasn't the only one who thought he could stand against Trump and survive. Liz Cheney went even further. She built her entire career around it. Liz Cheney, the Trump hater who lost everything. Liz Cheney wasn't just a critic. She made opposing Trump her entire personality. She thought she could be the leader of the anti-Trump party, called January 6th an insurrection, and even joined the Democrats' committee against him.
Do you believe if Donald Trump were elected next year that he would try to stay in office beyond a second term? That he would never leave office?
There's no question.
You think he would try to stay in power forever?
Absolutely. I mean, he's already done it once. And in fact, if you look at what he did in the run-up to January 6th in terms of his pressure on the vice president not to count legitimate electoral votes, his pressure on the Department of Justice, on state officials, and then refusing to send help when the Capitol was under attack, he's already attempted to seize power. And he was stopped thankfully, and for the good of the nation and the republic. But he said he will do it again. He's expressed no remorse for what he did. A vote for Donald Trump may mean the last election that you ever get to vote in. And again, I don't say that lightly, and it I think is heartbreaking that that's where we are. But people have to recognize that a vote for Donald Trump is a vote against the Constitution. I was a Republican even before Donald Trump started spray tanning. So I'll tell you, in 1976, when I was 10 years old, and I was sealing envelopes for President Ford's re-election campaign, I cast my first vote ever in 1984 for Ronald Reagan. I served in the State Department in both Bush administrations, and I served in the United States House of Representatives for 3 terms, including as the 3rd highest ranking Republican in House leadership. So, in other words, I was a Republican even before Donald Trump started spray tanning.
She voted to impeach him and joined Democrats in attacking MAGA, thinking she could be the leader of the new Republican Party.
They want to get the Arab American vote. They want to get the Muslim votes. So she picks Liz Cheney, whose father virtually destroyed the Middle East, right? I don't think it's working out too well. You know, it's interesting. If you give, Liz Cheney, she talks big, oh, I want war. She always wants war. Every time I was with her in the White House, we should attack this nation, that nation, nations that people never even heard of, we should attack. She's a big tough guy, she's a big tough one. She's a tough one. But if you gave Liz Cheney a gun and put her into battle facing the other side with guns pointing at her, she wouldn't have the courage or the strength or the stamina to even look the enemy in the eye. She wouldn't have. She sits back in Washington, oh, we ought to go and attack Iran, Iraq. We're going to attack everybody. That's why I broke up with her. All she wanted to do is go to war with everybody. Because she, like Kamala, is a stupid person. It's easy for her to say she wants to start wars from the comfort of her nice home.
Trump hammered the final nail in her political coffin by endorsing her primary challenger, Harriet Hageman, and Cheney got wiped out, losing by nearly 40 points.
She's a radical war hawk. Let's put her with a rifle standing there with 9 barrels shooting at her, okay? Let's see how she feels about it. When the guns are trained on her face.
She went from Republican royalty to a total outcast. And now she's out of Congress and irrelevant. But she wasn't the first Republican Trump took down for betrayal. Jeff Sessions was. Jeff Sessions, Trump's biggest regret. Jeff Sessions was one of Trump's earliest supporters, but he also became one of his biggest disappointments. Trump trusted Jeff Sessions and made him Attorney General, one of the most powerful positions in the country.
Mr. Sessions is a throwback to a shameful era, which I know both black and white Americans thought was in our past. It's inconceivable to me that a person of this attitude is qualified to be a U.S. attorney, let alone a United States federal judge.
And what did Sessions do? He gave the deep state control of the Russia investigation.
I am disappointed in the Attorney General. He should not have recused himself almost immediately after he took office. And if he was going to recuse himself, he should have told me prior to taking office, and I would have quite simply picked somebody else. So I think that's a bad thing, not for the president, but for the presidency. I think it's unfair to the presidency, and that's the way I feel. Thank you.
Trump was furious and never forgave him. He publicly trashed Sessions, mocked him for being weak, and eventually forced him out.
The president also harshly criticized former Attorney General Jeff Sessions for recusing himself from the investigation, even mocking his Southern accent.
The Attorney General says, I'm going to recuse myself. And I said, why the hell didn't he tell me that before I put him in? How do you recuse yourself?
Sessions was asked to resign November 7th, the day after last year's midterm elections. And
Sessions tried to win back his Senate seat in Alabama, but Trump endorsed his opponent, and just like that, his career was over. Another person who thought he could replace Trump as the leader of the Republican Party was Mitt Romney, the man who just couldn't take the hint. Mitt Romney, the ultimate loser who got left behind. Mitt Romney wanted to be the face of the Republican resistance to Trump and begged Republican voters to reject Trump in 2016, but they didn't.
Mitt Romney made it clear he didn't speak out to endorse a particular candidate or to announce a run himself. Instead, his only message was don't vote for Trump.
Donald Trump is a phony, a fraud. His promises are as worthless as a degree from Trump University.
Mitt Romney not mincing words when it comes to the candidacy of Donald Trump.
But you say, wait. Isn't he a huge business success? Doesn't he know what he's talking about? No, he isn't. And no, he doesn't.
The 2012 Republican presidential nominee emerging from the GOP establishment to try to take down Trump.
Trump won the nomination and went ahead to win the presidency.
I can't imagine any circumstance under which I would hope that Donald Trump would be our president again. I don't think he's likely to be helpful to the Republican Party if he's our nominee. I'd like to see someone else. You know, there are a number of really fine people that are running. I think character matters and a vision for the future matters. I'd like to see someone from the next generation, not an old guy like me. And by the way, I wish President Biden would step aside too, but you know, my wishes don't seem to be coming true.
Romney was humiliated, but he didn't stop. In 2020, he became the first senator in U.S. history to vote to convict a president from his own party.
The allegations made in the articles of impeachment are very serious. As a senator juror, I swore an oath before God to exercise impartial justice. I am profoundly religious. My faith is at the heart of who I am. I take an oath before God as enormously consequential. I knew from the outset that being tasked with judging the president, the leader of my own party, would be the most difficult decision I have ever faced. The grave question the Constitution tasks senators to answer is whether the president committed an act so extreme and egregious that it rises to the level of a high crime and misdemeanor. Yes, he did. The president asked a foreign government to investigate his political rival.
Trump responded by completely humiliating Romney, calling him a choke artist and mocking his failed presidential run.
I heard that Mitt Romney made a fairly long speech. And I mean, honestly, I thought I'll just address it quickly because it's irrelevant. Look, Mitt is a failed candidate. He failed. That was a race, I have to say, folks, that should have been won. And I wasn't happy about it, I'll be honest, because I am not a fan of Barack Obama, and that was a race that I backed Mitt Romney. I backed him. You can see how loyal he is. He was begging for my endorsement. I could have said, Mitt, drop to your knees. He would have dropped to his knees. He was begging. So when I heard Mitt was going to run, a little before this period of time, I was very tough. I said, he can't run, he can't run. He was going to run, he can't run. Then I started saying, look, we got to keep him out because he's going to lose. He's a choke artist. He's an absolute, and I started hitting him so hard. In fact, people say, why'd you hit him so hard? Because we cannot take another loss. We can't take another loss. And Mitt is indeed a choke artist. He choked, and he choked like I've never seen anyone choke. So ultimately, Mitt chickened out. And now he's saying, probably sees Hillary's very weak. And now he's saying, oh, I wish I went, I wish I tried it. But ultimately he didn't, because he would have gotten beaten very badly.
Realizing he had no future in Trump's party, he chose retirement over defeat. But Romney wasn't the only one who clashed with Trump. John McCain had a feud that changed Republican politics forever. John McCain, Trump's most personal feud. John McCain was a war hero, but when it came to Trump, he led the charge against him. They were never friends, but when McCain blocked Trump's repeal of Obamacare, one of Trump's biggest campaign promises, it became obvious that he was out to derail Trump's agenda.
1:29 a.m. Senator McCain re-enters the chamber. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell stands at the front of the room like he had most of the night. The grin on his face, though, quickly disappears.
Mr. Peters.
Senator Bernie Sanders appears to nudge Senator Jeanne Shaheen as if to say, watch this. McCain waves his hand to get the attention of the Senate clerk, pauses for just a moment, and gives a dramatic thumbs down. An audible gasp on the Senate floor, and then commotion. Some Democrats can't contain their excitement. Senator Elizabeth Warren leans in to get a better look and breaks into applause. Senator Dianne Feinstein, a single assertive clap. Senator Sherrod Brown slams his hand on the desk in affirmation, while some Republicans, like Senator Marco Rubio, stare in disbelief. Senator Bill Cassidy drops his head. Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer turns and waves his arms, apparently trying to quiet them, as Senator John McCain turns around and walks back to his chamber desk all alone.
Mr. Reid. When he finally had the chance to do it, he voted against repeal and replace. He voted against at 2 o'clock in the morning. Remember, thumbs down. We said, what the hell happened? He said 2 hours before he was voting to repeal and replace, and he went thumbs down. Badly hurting the Republican Party, badly hurting our nation, and hurting many sick people who desperately wanted good, affordable health care. We would have had it. This would have saved our country over $1 trillion in entitlements, and we would have ended up making a great health care plan, frankly, with the Democrats, because they would have had no choice.
McCain thought he had crippled Trump's presidency, and Trump never forgave him. He called McCain out for years, exposing his failures and weakness.
John McCain goes, oh boy, Trump makes my life difficult. He had 15,000 crazies show up, crazies. He called them all crazy. I said, they weren't crazy. They were great Americans. These people, if you would have seen these people, I know what crazy is. I know all about crazies. These weren't crazy. So he insulted me, and he insulted everybody in that room. And I said, somebody should run against John McCain, who has been, in my opinion, not so hot. And I supported him. I supported him for president. I raised $1 million for him. It's a lot of money. I supported him. He lost. He let us down. But, he lost. So I never liked him as much after that, because I don't like losers. But Frank, let me get to it. He hit me. He's not a war hero.
He's a war hero.
He's a war hero.
5.5 years.
He's a war hero because he was captured. I like people that weren't captured, okay? I hate to tell you.
Do you agree with that?
He's a war hero because he was captured, okay? You can have, and I believe perhaps he's a war hero, but right now he said some very bad things about a lot of people.
McCain passed away in 2018, but Trump's movement only grew stronger while McCain's political dynasty faded away.
Mr. President, why are you attacking Senator John McCain?
I'm very unhappy that he didn't repeal and replace Obamacare. As you know, he campaigned on repealing and replacing Obamacare for years, and then he got to a vote and he said thumbs down, and our country would have saved $1 trillion and we would have had great health care. So he campaigned. He told us hours before that he was going to repeal and replace, and then for some reason, I think I understand the reason, he ended up going thumbs up. And frankly, had we even known that, I think we would have gotten a vote because we could have gotten somebody else. So I think that's disgraceful. Plus, there are other things. I was never a fan of John McCain, and I never will be. Thank you very much, everybody.
McCain may have thought he could defy Trump, but Paul Ryan tried to play both sides and still lost. Paul Ryan, from Speaker of the House to political nobody. Paul Ryan was once the most powerful Republican in Congress, the Speaker of the House, but instead of backing Trump, he tried to undermine him. In 2016, when the Access Hollywood tape surfaced, Ryan saw an opportunity to distance himself from Trump.
I think you can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think you can oppose the president on some issue that you fundamentally disagree with, but also work with the other party on issues you do agree with. That's what I've been doing. Look,
Ryan blocked parts of Trump's agenda, sabotaged him from behind the scenes, and thought he could be the leader of the respectable Republican Party.
Trump's not a conservative. He's an authoritarian narcissist. They basically called him out for that. All of his tendencies are, basically where narcissism takes him, which is whatever makes him popular, or makes him feel good at any given moment. And he doesn't think in classical liberal conservative terms. He thinks in an authoritarian way. And he's been able to get a big chunk of the Republican base to follow him because he's the culture warrior.
So now you're calling for unity.
I am calling for unity.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
Would have been nice before the election.
He won. Look, he won.
And the other thing I thought was funny that you said was when you said, hey, look, I want Trump to succeed. You know who that sounds like? It sounds like a Democrat. It sounds like a Democrat saying,
well,
you know
I hope
what?
the Democrats sound like that.
Well, of course you want Trump to succeed. You're a Republican.
Here, look, I'm a conservative Republican. I'm a free market, limited government.
No, but you know what I'm saying? That's who I hear.
Yeah, but my
saying
brand of
things.
conservatism doesn't always overlap with Trump populism.
I understand, but it was binary. But you know, we argued about that.
I know we argued. I don't know.
Binary all along. It was always binary. And a vote not for Trump was a vote for Kamala Harris. Can you imagine?
I know you want to get back to this.
Huh?
Here's the point. A lot of this agenda, my kind of conservatism, Trump populism, it overlaps.
Okay.
We disagree on trade and things like that. I'm not with trade fights on China, but I'm not a big fan of all the tariffs on our allies. But the point is, all this other stuff, the tax policy, the border policy, the deregulatory policy, very good for America, very good for the economy.
Don't sacrifice the good for the perfect.
It only gets done if Republicans stay unified. And I think it's important that Republicans stay.
But Trump didn't forget. As soon as the midterms came around, he exposed Ryan's disloyalty, called him out for failing Republicans, and made it clear that there was no place for weak leadership in the MAGA world.
So Paul Ryan was not a talent. He wasn't a leader. When the people in freedom and great congressmen wanted to go after the Dems for things that they did very badly, he wouldn't give subpoenas, whereas Nancy Pelosi hands them out like they're cookies. Paul Ryan was a lame duck for a long time as Speaker. He was unable to raise money. He lost control of the House. The only success Paul Ryan had was the time that he was with me, because we got taxes cut. I got regulation cuts. I did that mostly without him. But for Paul Ryan to be complaining is pretty amazing. I remember a day in Wisconsin, a state that I won, where I stood up and made a speech, and then I introduced him, and they booed him off the stage, 10,000 people. So for him to be going out and opening his mouth is pretty incredible. But maybe he gets paid for that. Who knows? Maybe he gets paid for that.
First of all, Rand Paul shouldn't even be on this stage. He's number 11. He's got 1% in the polls, and how he got up here, there's far too many people. Anyway.
Ryan didn't even run for re-election. He saw the writing on the wall, walked away, and became irrelevant. Trump didn't just defeat Paul Ryan, he erased him from the Republican Party. Ryan may have tried to stay in the middle, but the next group of Republicans made the biggest mistake of all voting to impeach Trump.
On this vote, the ayes are 232. The nays are 197. The resolution is adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
It has passed. The gavel has fallen. 232 yes votes for the impeachment of Donald John Trump. Just extraordinary. It has happened twice now to President Trump. Only president in American history to be impeached twice, just 7 days, less than 7 days now left in his term. We haven't heard much from the president today. We should be hearing from him at some point later today. He's under some pressure to say more, to speak out against the violence, to lower the possibilities that he faces, Lindsey Davis, an actual conviction in the Senate.
After January 6th, 10 House Republicans thought they could end Trump's political career. They voted to impeach him, convinced the party would move on, but one by one, Trump destroyed them. Every single one of them thought the Republican Party would move on from Trump. Instead, voters made sure the party moved on from them. And no one crashed and burned harder than Adam Kinzinger, the so-called Republican who made hating Trump his full-time job. Adam Kinzinger, the crybaby congressman.
Donald Trump is a weak man pretending to be strong. He is a small man pretending to be big. He's a faithless man pretending to be righteous. He's a perpetrator who can't stop playing the victim.
Adam Kinzinger thought he'd be a hero for turning on Trump. He joined Liz Cheney on the January 6th committee, pushed the media's anti-Trump narrative, and thought voters would thank him.
The Republican Party is no longer conservative. It has switched its allegiance from the principles that gave it purpose to a man whose only purpose is himself. Donald Trump is a weak man pretending to be strong. He is is a small man pretending to be big. He's a faithless man pretending to be righteous. He's a perpetrator who can't stop playing the victim.
Trump called him a weak loser and backed a MAGA Republican to replace him. Kinzinger didn't even try to fight, he just quit.
Why are we helping some of the people? Why are we helping Liz Cheney? I mean, Liz Cheney is a disaster. She's a crying lunatic and crying Adam Kinzinger. He's a super crying. I never saw the guy not crying. He's always crying. I look at him, I remember years ago he was actually on my side. And then one day, you know, when you don't want to kill people in wars, they turn against you. Liz Cheney hated the concept of not going to war with everybody. Let's kill everybody. Let's spend a lot of money on military equipment, you know, where her father works, right? And but what she did was incredible. Think of it. They destroyed and deleted all of that information that went on for almost 2 years against Trump.
Now he's a CNN contributor, which is where all failed Republicans go to cry about Trump. But at least Kinzinger knew when to run. Tom Rice thought he could win. T-O-M-R-I-C-E, the first to fall. And Tom Rice didn't just vote to impeach Trump. He doubled down and said he'd do it again.
You surprised almost everybody when you came out and voted in favor of impeachment.
It wasn't that hard. I mean, when I thought about what had happened and the president's activity or inactivity that day, when he sat there and he put his own vice president's life and the vice president's wife and daughter's life at risk of people shouting, "Hang Mike Pence." When he watched the Capitol, the People's House, being sacked. When he watched the Capitol police officers being beaten for 3 or 4 hours and lifted not one finger to stop it. The more I read about that and the more I learned about it, it was clear to me what I had to do. I was livid. I'm livid today about it. I took an oath to protect the Constitution, and I did it then, and I would do it again tomorrow.
Trump endorsed his primary opponent, Russell Fry, and Rice got slaughtered. He lost his primary by over 25 points.
Rice, fry the rice, yeah. For years, he talked conservative at home, but as soon as he got back to Washington and crawled in with the swamp, he sided with Nancy Pelosi. And when the stakes were highest, when called upon to make the most consequential vote that any Congress can make, whether to impeach a president or not, Tom Rice voted to impeach President Donald Trump. He broke our trust. He sided with Nancy Pelosi on voting to impeach. And that explains, I'm gonna have a dad joke for a second, get ready. Y'all ready? That explains why Tom Rice-A-Roni is the San Francisco treat. Yeah! But I have news for you. On June 14th, it's our turn to vote. And this time, we conservatives in the Grand Strand and the PD are going to vote to impeach Tom Rice at the ballot box.
But some of them thought they could betray Trump, then beg for forgiveness, like Jaime Herrera Beutler. Jaime Herrera Beutler betrayed Trump, then begged for help.
In her speech on the House floor, Herrera Beutler says the vote to impeach President Trump wasn't about choosing sides, but choosing truth. In a historic vote Wednesday, Representative Jaime Herrera Beutler was only one of 10 House Republicans to vote to impeach President Donald Trump for a second time.
Jaime Herrera Beutler didn't just vote to impeach Trump. She went further and helped the Democrats by claiming Kevin McCarthy told her Trump refused to stop the riot.
Truth sets us free from fear. Truth doesn't guarantee bad things won't happen, but it does promise to always prevail in the end. It has no shadows where darkness can hide. With truth comes love, and we could use that right now. My vote to impeach our sitting president is not a fear-based decision. I am not choosing a side, I'm choosing truth. It's the only way to defeat fear.
When she realized she was in big trouble, she tried to backtrack. She literally begged Trump for an endorsement, but he ignored her. The voters crushed her and she lost her primary to Joe Kent, a Trump-backed candidate. Beutler at least tried to save herself. Peter Mayer, however, walked into his own defeat. Peter Mayer, one-term wonder. Peter Mayer was a young, fresh-faced congressman with a long career ahead of him. Then he threw it all away by voting to impeach Trump in his first term.
I would say the moment came when the president continued to fail to take any sense of accountability or acknowledge that he may have been responsible, or even at least partly responsible, for the horrible events we saw on January 6th. This has been, I think, for many of us, especially those who decided to vote for impeachment, one of the worst weeks of our lives, one of the hardest votes we've ever had to take. I've been talking to a number of colleagues. Just felt physically nauseous. This is not how we wanted this to go down. We wanted to make sure that there was accountability, but this is just a horrible moment. And the reaction has been surprising. Some corners expressing support, but also, and I feel terrible about this. Constituents who feel greatly disappointed. At the end of the day, this was a vote of conscience, and I believe that in order to have accountability, we first must reckon with what happened, and that is why I voted to support impeachment.
Trump endorsed John Gibbs against him in the primary, and Meyer lost.
Republican Congressman Peter Meyer has narrowly lost his primary race to Trump-endorsed candidate John Gibbs. Meyer is now the second Republican who voted to impeach the former president and lost his re-election bid.
One term, that's all he got. Trump made sure he never saw a second. Some of them barely survived, but their time is running out, like Dan Newhouse. Dan Newhouse, the one who barely survived.
Madam Speaker, this is a sad day in our republic, but not as sad or disheartening as the violence we witnessed in the Capitol last Wednesday. We are all responsible. My colleagues are responsible for not condemning rioters this past year, like those who barricaded the doors of the Seattle Police Department and attempted to murder the officers inside. Others, including myself, are responsible for not speaking out sooner, before the president misinformed and inflamed a violent mob who tore down the American flag and brutally beat Capitol Police officers. Madam Speaker, we must all do better. These articles of impeachment are flawed, but I will not use process as an excuse. There is no excuse for President Trump's actions. The president took an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Last week, there was a domestic threat at the door of the Capitol, and he did nothing to stop it. That is why, with a heavy heart and clear resolve, I will vote yes on these articles of impeachment.
Dan Newhouse is one of the only pro-impeachment Republicans still standing, but barely. Trump endorsed his opponent, Lauren Culp, and Newhouse only survived by a hair. He survived for now, but his career is on borrowed time. Some of them saw the writing on the wall and quit before Trump could humiliate them, like Fred Upton. Fred Upton, the swamp veteran who gave up. Fred Upton had been in Congress for over 35 years, and he thought he was untouchable. Then he voted to impeach Trump and realized he was finished.
The last thing that I would want to do is to have this effort reelect Trump. I cast a vote to impeach him. I would not want to be part of any effort that would see him reelected in terms of a rematch, which is why I'm working so hard on no labels and really allow the voters to have a choice, have a third choice, if in fact that's exactly what it is. Now, if you look at some of the polls, and I've seen a lot of them over the since March. I think Rasmussen has had Trump beating Biden since June. You look at the electoral vote count. You look at the stuff that I get every day from the Trump team on my own internet, my own website. You think that he's running away with it. So it's going to be a very interesting year, that's for sure, as we look ahead. But the bottom line is, let's let the voters have a choice and let them decide what their ballot will look like come November of next year, if in fact it's tried Biden and Trump.
Trump mocked him as a rhino, and Upton chose retirement over total defeat. Even the career politicians knew they couldn't outlast Trump. And there's Anthony Gonzalez. Trump didn't just beat him, he broke him. Anthony Gonzalez. He called Trump a cancer on the GOP and thought he could lead a new Republican movement.
I think I'd probably be a no if he had seen all this and immediately said, hey, cut this out. Here comes the National Guard. We're done. This isn't what I wanted. But instead, we had multiple hours go by. And the first tweet that went out was actually attacking the vice president while the Capitol was under siege.
Asked if he considered the political ramifications of his vote, Gonzalez said he did, but
you have to love your country and you have to adhere to your oath more strongly than you do your job. Yes, in the short run, maybe you lose your seat, maybe you don't get to come back. But in the long arc of history, I believe it was the right vote. And I believe it sends the right message.
Trump endorsed Max Miller against him, and Gonzalez quit politics entirely. He didn't just beat Gonzalez, but also made him give up on politics altogether. He wasn't the only one who ran away rather than face Trump. John Katko did the same thing. John Katko, the fake Republican who fled. John Katko had a moderate anti-Trump record, so his impeachment vote wasn't a surprise.
Of course Trump is a knucklehead. And of course I don't like him as a person. I don't like him, his rhetoric. I don't like his lack of discipline. I'm more concerned about your pocketbook. I'm more concerned about your economic opportunity. And I'm more concerned about where we are going as a country. And that's really what I'm talking about. And so when I talk about supporting the president, it's not a blanket endorsement. My God, there's not a single picture, not a single clip that anyone could produce showing I've even had a picture with the guy. I don't like him. But I am concerned about where we're going as a country, okay? And where we're going as a country is, do we want to stagnate the economic growth we had before the pandemic, where African-American and Hispanic and female unemployment were at all-times low in the history of our country? Or do we want to go back to a time with higher taxes and less opportunity and more government and more taxes? That's really where I'm talking about. So it's about the direction of the country as a whole. So that's what I'm about.
But when he saw how the MAGA base reacted, he chose to retire rather than face Trump's wrath. But there's only one last name left, the only pro-impeachment Republican still in Congress. David Valadao, the last one standing. David Valadao barely survived. He's the only pro-impeachment Republican still in Congress, which is because he had no serious Trump-backed challenger.
According to CNN, Trump during the meeting singled out Valadao, saying, quote, "I never loved him."
For now, he's safe, but he won't last forever.
CNN also reports Trump bragged that most of the 10 House Republicans who had voted to impeach him in 2021, which includes Valadao, were no longer in Congress. Valadao is one of two who has kept his seat despite the impeachment vote, but Politico reports that Trump instead extended an olive branch to those who impeached him. Politico says lawmakers told them Trump's comments were forward-thinking and about winning the election with a bigger GOP majority in the House.
Every single one of them made the same mistake. They thought Trump was finished. Instead, Trump is stronger than ever, and they're nothing but a footnote in history.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
And